of different versions of this story. And I mean, the story as I understood it was, I mean, first of all, for some bizarre reason, they chose to, shoot at the edge of the Sahara Desert in the middle of the summer. And it was, 120 degrees, very, very difficult shooting conditions. And we got to this day where they were going to shoot this scene. And most of us, Tunisia, while it's a beautiful country, we were all having an incredibly difficult time with the food and the water there. And so practically everyone except Steven Spielberg, who actually had food shipped into him from England, he would get like boxes of pork and beans delivered to him, and he would eat like all of his meals out of cans. So he was one of the few of the group that like stayed reasonably healthy in the course of the shooting in Tunisia. And everybody else was just dropping like flies. We were all like just, Montezuma's Revenge, like in a wild sort of way. And so Harrison, I think, was not feeling well, but to add insult to injury, they arrive on the set. Now, the scene with the big man dressed in the black robes and the black turban, wielding the huge scimitar, this was meant to be like a big scene in the film. It was like the central, it was going to be the whip fight with the sword kind of thing. And if I remember, in the original script, it went on for 3 or 4 pages, and it was a major set piece. And they arrived on the set to shoot it. Harrison was not feeling well. It was an unbelievably hot day, and the guy, who was kind of a glorified extra who came to do this thing, basically didn't know how to handle the sword. And they began starting to shoot this sequence, and he couldn't really do the scene. And they would start out, and he didn't look like somebody who knew how to handle this sword. And Harrison was trying to do the thing with the whip, but it just wasn't working. And Harrison, at one point, almost like joking, pulled out his gun and shot the guy. Just like in kind of pantomime. And suddenly it occurred to them that this was actually an incredibly good idea. And so they just went with it. And Harrison shot him, and he fell over, and that was the end of the scene, and everybody went home for the day.
You will help us find it.
I think the one really underdeveloped role in the original script when I read it was Cate Blanchett's role. That character was not very fleshed out. And the minute that Stephen very much wanted Cate Blanchett to play that part, although in the beginning she was not available during the time period, and so it didn't look like she was going to be able to do it. And she was able to clear her schedule so that she could do it. And the minute that she said yes to it, they dove back in and really started to work on her character. But that was the one sort of weak link in the script, as I remember from the beginning.
Why are you so mad at me?
How much time you got?
Now, Dr. Jones, you will help us?
What?
A simple yes will do.
Oh, Marion, you had to go and get yourself kidnapped.
It's not like you did any better.
Same old, same old.
And cut. That's great. Play that one back, please.
I think that the scene in the quicksand, where I tell him that Mutt is his son, when we were shooting that scene, they had built these tubes, like these vacuum tubes on the set, and they were sort of buried down, and they kind of sucked us down into this sand, although it wasn't really sand. It was, it was like a kind of grain material, although I think it looks like sand on film. And there were terrible, terrible problems with these tubes. They just weren't working. They were making noise they shouldn't be making. One of us would go down and the other one wouldn't. There was just one problem after another problem after another problem. And we would shoot a version of the scene, and something would go wrong with the tubes or with the something, you know, one thing after another. And we were under a certain amount of pressure at that time too. For some reason, we had to get off of that set and onto another set. And I think we just had one day or something scheduled to shoot that scene. And it was, you know, an important scene in the film because it was that moment in which I tell him, you know, and it was just one of those days that was just everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I was never happy with, you know, I mean, we ended up with so few takes where there wasn't some kind of technical problem. And at the end of the day, you know, Stephen just threw up his hands and went, yeah, I guess, you know, that's it. I guess we've shot it, you know. And he wasn't happy, and Harrison wasn't happy, and I wasn't happy, and yet we had to move on. And I think Stephen felt, you know, I mean, he felt confident enough. If he really was truly unhappy with it, you know, I'm sure he could have found it in the ridiculously, I want to make a joke and say like minimal budget, to find another day to go back and reshoot. But I guess he thought it was good enough, you know, that we could move forward. But I was never happy with it myself. I thought it could have been better. And even, you know, now when I look at it, I still see all the problems with the tubes. It doesn't look real to me. It looks like, you know, we're having like tube problems. It gets in the way.